The story of GM's rebadged Roadster era. In the early 2000s, GM was desperately trying to shake its reputation for making bland, uninspiring cars. Sales were lagging, young buyers weren't interested in the brand, and the idea of a small, affordable rear-wheel drive sports car hadn't been in the lineup since, well, ages. Enter the Kappa platform. From the start, GM intended to spread the cost of development across multiple brands. But before any of these cars hit the streets, GM teased us with concept cars like the Pontiac Roadster, that was back in 2002, and around the same time Saturn also revealed two different concepts, but their original design didn't survive. Internally, the Kappa was meant to be GM's Miata fighter, and the goal was simple: affordable fun with eye-catching design. So let's start with the Solstice. The Pontiac Solstice was the first car to roll off the Kappa platform and hit the streets in 2006. It wasn't just a big deal for GM, it was the poster child for Pontiac's attempt revival. The Solstice had a retro meet modern vibe with a long hood, short rear deck, wide fenders and a low slung profile. It looked like nothing else Pontiac was building at the time, and frankly, that's what got people excited. The base model came with a 2.5-liter Ecotec 4-cylinder, making around 177 horsepower, more than the Miata at the time. But where the Miata was light, nimble, and focused on the handling side, the Solstice went on another direction. It bet everything on style and raw power. That became even more obvious with the GXP model, launched in 2007, which added a 2-liter turbocharged engine pushing 260 horsepower. It turned the Solstice from a stylish cruiser into a legit performance machine. For the full first 2 years it was sold, the Solstice actually outsold the Miata in the US. That's not a small feat considering the Miata was basically the gold standard for small roadsters. GM clearly hit a nerve, and among all the Kappa platform cars, the Solstice was the only one to offer a removable Targa top in the coupe version, which in my opinion is the best looking of the bunch. Now let's talk about the Saturn Sky that came shortly after the Solstice. But thankfully, it wasn't just a lazy badge swap like many GM efforts in the past. It wasn't just a case of slapping a new emblem on the nose of a Solstice. The Sky had a completely different look. Its styling was sharp, modern, and more in line with European trends at the time. The front end was low and aggressive, the body panels were all unique, and the whole car was a bit more upscale. It felt like GM was actually trying to give Saturn a proper halo car and not just a repackaged Pontiac. Inside, Saturn made some smart moves too. The Sky came with more standard equipment that was optional on the Solstice. Things like power door locks and power mirrors, keyless entry, and also AC. Yep. Believe it or not, the Solstice didn't have AC in the base version, probably to keep the MSRP under $22,000 at the time. The interior design was also cleaner and slightly more upmarket, though ergonomics were still almost the same. This car and even the Solstice had 3 cup holders, which was a very American thing to do since the competitors sometimes didn't even have one. Performance was still solid, especially with the Sky Redline model. Just like the GXP, it used the same engine making 260 horsepower and a 0 to 60 time in the mid 5 seconds range. The Sky came off as a grown-up version of the Solstice. Less playful maybe, but more polished. Now before continuing, if you want to see more of these kind of content, please take a moment and subscribe. Thanks. Next we have the Opel GT. This was GM's attempt to bring the Kappa platform Roadster to Europe, and instead of giving the continent something entirely new, they went with a rebadged version of the Saturn Sky. But unlike most badge engineering efforts of the past, this time it actually made sense. The Sky was already sleek, modern, and it fitted well in the European design language, so Opel didn't need to reinvent anything. Visually, it was nearly identical to the Sky. The most obvious changes were minor. Slightly different taillights, side mirrors that were required by the updated 2009 European Union safety standards, and, well, obviously the Opel logos replacing the Saturn badges. Inside, the GT got cigarette lighters, ashtrays in the door cards, and a few trim variations, since smoking was a bit more popular in Europe at the time. Aside from that, it was business as usual. Under the hood, there was no base engine option. Every Opel GT came with the 2-liter turbocharged Ecotec. It was marketed as a premium performance roadster aimed at buyers who wanted something more exotic than a Miata but less expensive than a BMW Z4. The Daewoo G2X. This is by far the rarest and most obscure member of the Kappa platform family. Sold exclusively in South Korea, it was essentially a one-to-one match with the Opel GT version. It had the same interior, same exterior apart the ugly Daewoo badge, and it was weird. GM marketed the G2X as a halo car for Daewoo, a brand not typically associated with sporty or exciting cars. This was just hoping that it will boost the company image, which was very odd. Now let's talk about sales. The Pontiac Solstice and Saturn Sky performed surprisingly well for what was essentially a niche small roadster in the US. On the flip side, the Opel GT didn't quite meet expectations in Europe, and despite the novelty of a performance roadster, it never gained the traction GM had hoped for. As for the Daewoo G2X, fewer than 200 units were sold in South Korea, making it one of the rarest GM cars to exist. A second generation of the Pontiac and Saturn could have definitely been possible. However, GM's bankruptcy in 2009 ended any hope. In a way, though, these cars served as a fitting send-off to Pontiac, Saturn, and Daewoo, all brands that were eventually laid to rest. The Kappa platform with its stylish roadster marked the end of an era for GM's more adventurous side, symbolically closing the door on brands that never fully found their place in the modern automotive world. It's a bittersweet farewell to cars that, while not mainstream, capture the heart of many. So what do you think? Should GM have kept the dream alive for a second round of roadsters, maybe under the Chevy and Cadillac brand? Make sure to leave a comment, subscribe, and, well, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.